Hi.
Hi, how are you? Is it
Yeah.
just the two of us again?
No, I think we'll have a bit of a better turnout this time because of the time
Yeah,
difference. Being a little more
yeah,
a little
exactly.
kinder to the people across the pond.
At least suits me better, but let's see for the rest of the
Mm.
group.
Hi everyone. I was just going to give it a couple of minutes to make sure that everybody who wants to be on can make it in time. Just thought I'd introduce myself, as there are a few more of you this time. I'm Kai. I do the training for all of Heath Media, so all of the people within the team and everything like that, development of new strategies, and kind of making sure that we're keeping our finger on the pulse and rolling out new changes as and when they're necessary. In terms of what I've got planned for today, I was going to focus a lot on the biggest lever that we can pull, which would be creative. So I'm going to develop a lot of the session around that and give you some ideas on like actionable takeaways that you can use and go away and test in your accounts. Because obviously, Brad's session, if you weren't on it yesterday, was really valuable. You'll definitely want to check that out in the recordings area. Um, so that was a really kind of structure focused session, but considering the big focus on structure, I wanted to also kind of put that hand in hand with what we can test within that structure. I think the real goal that we sort of covered it in Brad's session yesterday was ensuring that we know that the structure is there to help us test. And so we can develop our creative, which should be our main focus, around the structure that we develop. So if you will, like the structure just gives the chance for the creative to best achieve what it can, kind of like gives it the best chance to succeed. So I was going to cover maybe a couple of creative types, like formats that you can use, as well as how to look at creative and how you should consider creative when you're trying to get it made and get it in the account. And like Brad was talking about yesterday, iterating on that. Like I say, if you missed that session, I'd strongly advise that you take a look at that because it was just so valuable. So diving straight in then. Obviously, there's so many different types. There was some discussion yesterday on angles, and the way we really like to start our creative tests is have a creative research session, so that we can take a look at what is going to resonate the most with your customers. I feel like probably the biggest thing to take away from this creative research session sort of thing that you schedule in for your brand. I think the biggest takeaway there is you really want to understand where your clients and customers are coming from, and you want to use their words, and you want to create creative that speaks to them in a language that they can easily understand. So the way I would see that as a hello. Uh, so the way I
Hi.
would hire is there do you have a question, or if not, we'll carry on. No? Okay. So the way I would approach doing creative research then is try and really personify what your customers are saying about your brand, and what is really the reason behind their purchase, because typically the reason behind their purchase is also going to be the reason behind a lot of other people's purchases as well. Like a lot of the emotional and logistical triggers that are going to push them to purchase are going to be almost not universal, but they're going to belong to certain groups in your audience. So if I just use the idea of the audiences that we're targeting, I know Brad spoke a lot about that yesterday in terms of the structure. We could be targeting any number of people. We could be using like an interest stack. We could be using lookalikes, an Advantage Plus audience, maybe. We could be using a broad audience or maybe even a slightly more specific one. Ultimately, Facebook is going to serve your ads to many, many people, especially if it's the kind of product that is, it can be kind of like used by a large group of people. So there I'm talking kind of along the lines of e-com. So realistically, when we're targeting so many people, let's say we've got an audience of millions. Well, if you weren't spending like a huge amount, you're realistically not going to reach all of those. You know, you're not going to reach, in the case of a broad campaign, you're not going to reach the entirety of the USA. What you will do is you hand over the targeting from the audience side of things over to the creative side of things. So I want you to see this as your creative doing the targeting, if that makes sense. So when you do start calling out your customers, when you do start hitting pain points that your customers are looking for solutions for, when you start coming up with ideas for creatives that's going to resonate more with the kind of customer that you're getting into your business, that is where the algorithm is then going to say, we're seeing that kind of that kind of prominence almost from that specific audience. And so what it's going to do in the end is serve those ads to the most relevant people possible. So your creative dictates who will see the ad. So I really want you to approach this creative research that I recommend that you do for your brand from the perspective of you understanding that creative is a huge actual part of the targeting. Sometimes we actually get clients say to us, is broad too broad? And I've certainly had like a lot of people in terms of consulting ask me whether they were, you know, should they target this audience or that audience? Should they be doing like a dramatic amount of audience testing? And realistically, the answer there, I would say, is no, because that effort would be better spent on creative testing, because that's going to be the biggest difference that you can make, and B, it's going to find different pockets of those audiences that you're targeting anyway, based on who it's going to resonate the most with. So let's take UGC, for example. Maybe you get some UGC created and the algorithm notices that people in your audience, a certain proportion of those are going to react really well to UGC and they're going to respond really well to that. And then there's also a portion that won't. So it's going to serve UGC to the people who value UGC, and it's going to serve other ads to people who prefer to use or prefer to see other kinds of content. So maybe if certain other people have a tendency to react to really high quality videos, or maybe they prefer feature point outs or testimonials are the reason why they buy, Facebook's going to show those ads to those kinds of people, which makes complete sense. And there's obviously a lot of kind of computer, like, you know, machine learning and algorithms behind that. So it's really valuable to know that the kinds of different formats of creative, so creative differentiation, is definitely going to be something that you will find unlocks different parts of your audience. So maybe you've been running loads of UGC and you think you're hitting a ceiling. because maybe your frequency is going up, or maybe your cost per result is going up, or maybe your cost per purchase or cost per lead is going up. What you'll actually find is that maybe your audience, a lot of people talk about audience saturation, and maybe they feel like they've reached everyone possible in their audience. Maybe what you actually need, instead of a different audience, for example, is to actually try and focus on differentiating the creative, show people different things, and in different formats as well, in order for them to actually be able to, those creatives to actually be able to reach different people. So that focus can be really valuable. And I know that was a slight tangent from the creative research, but it's really important that you know that creative actually unlocks more of the audience that you're targeting. And it's also a form of targeting in itself. If you can get maybe more moms, for example, more moms to engage with an ad, it's going to almost like a flywheel effect. That's how Meta describe it. It's going to have a flywheel effect, and your data that you're getting and that engagement that you're getting from moms is going to result in more engagement from moms. And it's just almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy from there. So with creative as a form of targeting, as a concept out of the way, we've covered that. I want to delve into how you can do creative research and how you can take away from this session and actually feel like there's some key takeaways that you can develop for your business. So a big thing would be to dive into customer reviews. What are customers saying about the product? What are they loving about the product? Maybe what are they not enjoying so much about the product? And you need to start to see those as angles to target and objections to overcome as well. So from that point of view, the customer review point of view, I'd really recommend taking a look at your reviews. Maybe you can install a post-purchase survey on your website as well, and maybe ask for the reason why people have bought, and obviously maybe some more words than that, and get them to really kind of engage with your brand, because you're trying to improve, which is what that's why everybody's here in this group. We're trying to improve. So that would be a big part of what I would recommend. But the creative research from customer reviews doesn't have to stop there. You can dive into competitors' reviews as well, and see maybe what reasons people are struggling with in the niche that you're in and in the space that you're in, and maybe you can overcome those as well. And maybe your product is something that your competitors can't do, or overcomes objections that your competitors can't. Or maybe it's just a better product overall that you have, that you feel like you could market a lot better, and you just need to understand what are those pain points. And you'll typically see those in the reviews a lot of the time, transformational stories in those reviews where people describe their life before the product and then after the product, can be realistically some of the best ads that you can create. And yes, they what I'm talking about there is just a simple testimonial, but it's in the customer's own words, and there's just so much value in speaking to the customer in their own words, and it can really help you nail down those winning creatives and winning angles. So that would be kind of step 0 almost, is understanding that creative can be a form of targeting. And then step 1 in the creative research, I would really recommend take a look at your own reviews and the feedback that you're getting, as well as like maybe you've got a post-purchase survey. If you don't, you can definitely implement those. They have so many benefits. Also, you can take a look at competitor reviews. So that's kind of like, in terms of creative research, that's step 1, looking at customer reviews for you and for your brand and maybe your competitors as well. There's also a really big one, is what are people saying on your socials How are people reacting to your ads? So looking at the comments on those, looking at the comments on your organic platforms as well. These can be absolutely key in order for you to start understanding. Maybe frequently asked questions are massive on socials, especially, some of your more engagement heavy ones like TikTok. That can, like a lot of TikTok comments, can really lift the lid on understanding maybe why people aren't buying, or maybe what questions people have that they'd like answered before they're buying. And then you'll also have almost like your advocates that love your brand engaging with your brand in a positive way as well, which is a huge win, because that's going to help convert more people and help you build your brand. So in terms of that kind of like step 2, it would be look across the socials of you and again and your competitors as well, and identify what kind of communications that you're getting from your customers, what they are about, and how you can overcome them. And if you find that you get loads of frequently asked questions on a certain topic, it might be worth pursuing an ad that covers that angle. So that's kind of like step 2 almost, of understanding what kind of angles to create. And then I feel like one of the best things to do in terms of writing copy, doing a brainstorm, coming up with angles that from your like creative research, is diving into the ads library, seeing what ads competitors are running. So this is just, you can Google Facebook ads library. And what you can do is you can type in keywords, or you can type in specific brands that you really like the look of, and see what they're doing. Now, there is a caveat here. You can't always determine how many like results and how profitable those ads are. But typically, if you scroll a little bit further down on the example of the ads library, for any given business, businesses don't tend to keep losing ads on. So if you can see, there will be a section where you have the date, and you can identify how long an ad's been left on. And if an ad has been left on for a while, or maybe you just really like the look of it, like the angle, it might be something worth you testing as well. And then you can let the creative metrics dictate how you test from there, which we can definitely go into. Additionally, I like to consider truly the why behind why brands, why people are buying from certain brands. So for example, there's True Classic, which they do t-shirts that kind of like, they're more of a muscle fit t-shirt. There's brands like Dollar Shave Club, like Dr. Squatch, all of these brands that are doing very well in terms of their marketing at the moment. And you want to identify what they're doing and why they're doing it as well. So if we take a look at maybe Dr. Squatch or True Classic, those are brands that when they're creative messaging, they're trying to hit on certain like innate desires that humans have. And they're trying to do that by coming up with a desire. So maybe the desire to be appreciated, maybe the desire to be wanted or loved, that kind of thing, romantically or otherwise. That kind of desire, they can then come up with several different angles for. So you want to really think about the root cause of why someone will buy the product. So in the case of True Classic, they want to buy a shirt that fits them really well. Why do they want to do that? Okay, so let's really drill down on the why. So we've got the why. They want to have a shirt that fits them. And then we've got the why do they want a shirt that fits them? So they look better. Why do they want to do that? So that they feel more confident, or so that they look better for their partner. And then you start to understand, okay, so the actual core reason is that this person wants to be maybe desired romantically. And then you can understand, as you reverse engineer it and you look at these different ads, what's it actually about? Maybe in terms of, I know Brad was talking about a client that we've worked with previously for a project, and they were doing a release, and a big part of what they were doing was they were releasing this course that had aspects to it that would help teachers save time planning. So the kind of big angle was like, get 50 free templates. And then you actually think, well, why would someone want 50 free templates? So that work is done for them, and so that work is easier for them. Why do they want work to be easier for them? Like, if you actually really think about it, it's because they want to save more time. And then you can start thinking, okay, this person wants to save time. Why do they want to save time? And you can start thinking of angles from there. And all of a sudden, we've reached the desire that someone wants to start saving time. They want to start getting time back. So we can think about angles along those lines, get time back, and then you could maybe even take it one step further. What angles can we associate with that desire? Maybe, want more time with your family, want more time to do what you love, want more time to start this business that which was specific to that brand. So you get the idea of how focusing on the why and really start asking yourself, what's the true like emotion behind the purchase? That's really going to help you as you start to develop your creative and start iterating on that creative. So when you find the best angles, you can start learning, okay, well, if this angle is resonating with the people, that clearly is maybe the right emotion. So you can experiment with maybe different angles along the lines of that emotion, or maybe you can experiment with different formats of creative, which we'll go into as well. So as we talk about the formats and the kind of like reasons behind these creatives, we start to break into the whole realm of that might feel a little bit more kind of familiar. I know I've kind of introduced some more like new concepts perhaps in this webinar so far. But what I would say is that as we start to think about how can we improve on maybe the content that we're showing, but we know that our angle is right, we start to think about stuff like UGC. We start to think about maybe like video, single image, carousels, and we don't just draw the line there. We could think about different kinds of creative that fall under those categories. You might have heard some of these before, different creative types. If not, that's not a problem at all. We can go through them. But the reason why you probably have heard them before is because a lot of these are just so powerful to use. So if you've got maybe a founder of the brand, maybe that is you. Maybe that's someone within your team, but a founder video can really peel back the layers of the brand, make the brand more relatable, and actually develop a kind of understanding of your company's ethos. And that's really going to help you in terms of making the customers who are seeing it, or potential customers who are seeing it, understand why this business. Yeah. So a big part, I think, of like, maybe some people might call it brand building, some people might consider it under creative research, is with your brand in mind, start asking yourself, like after this call and in like your creative research sessions, like, why would someone buy from me, and why should someone buy from me, and why aren't they buying from me right now? And you can understand there that why people aren't buying from you right now, those are objections that you'll want to overcome. which gives you more ideas for more ads. Reasons why you think people should be buying from you, those are also more angles, more ideas to test, and more ads. And then I really want you to think about, maybe, why should someone buy from my business? Why should people buy from us? And start understanding that that is going to help set you apart. And if maybe you can't land on a solid answer right now, I'd encourage you to think about that really deeply, so that you can understand, okay, I have competition in this space, because we've all got competition, whether that be direct or indirect. But why should they work with us? Why should they buy our products? And that sort of thinking is going to really elevate your ability to come up with some solid creative concepts. So as we start moving away from like the creative research part, as we start moving away from maybe the angles and the desires that we're trying to hit, which, trust me, you'll want to focus so much on your angles, because if you can find the number one reasons why people are buying from you, that's going to help you develop far more efficient creative. I think Brad brought it up yesterday, but if you've got a losing angle, and maybe you write 10 pieces of copy, but if it all just hits on that losing angle, it's not just a waste of like time, but it's also potentially a waste of resources if that's just not why people buy. That's not why people would consider you. If you think about reasons why people like are buying and would buy, and start iterating off those winning angles to start with, you can actually start to identify some really solid ads. So I wanted to move now into the formats of different ads and give you some ideas of creatives to test as well. And we'll take it that step beyond, try a video, I'll try a carousel. Let's think about, I want to give you some takeaways that you can think, okay, yeah, I'll try implementing that creative. So what I would start with is basically, I think that a solid starting point, especially if you don't have a ton of creative, would be single images with an overlay, and that overlay referring to the messaging. So that's a single image with text on it, nice big bit of text, because it's the creative that really attracts people's eye. And you have a nice big bit of text on it that actually covers the reason why you should buy. So the angle, in other words, or maybe you're overcoming the objection. So that's a super simple ad, and it works really well for testing with businesses that maybe don't have a huge amount of resources. Yeah, Robert, you've got your hand up if you want to ask away.
Yes, thank you, Kai. My question is related to the overlay and the text. Yep. Because in my case, we are talking about batch salts, and a recipe can have a lot of benefits, so more than one benefit. Based on your experience, if we are talking about single image text overlay, and of course you don't want to look the whole creative just text everywhere. How much is the too much? In your opinion, what is the, let's say, golden ratio between text on image if we are talking about single image?
Yeah. So when I started running ads like years ago, Facebook actually had a rule back then of I think it was 20% of the image. If 20% of the image consisted of text, it would get automatically rejected. That's actually changed now. And it's obviously, as you've probably found out on your own, it's no longer a reason for rejection. However, I would recommend maybe like not pushing that too much higher than 20%. A nice big bit of text is okay, but like you say, you certainly don't want to have like a full like a creative full of text. That's not what we want to go for. What we do want to hit though is maybe a key angle here, because when you do run a single image with an overlay, that is related to your angle, it forces you to think about the messaging that you're doing, because like there's nowhere to hide. You've just got this creative and you've got the text overlay. So I would probably, my preference would, based on my experience, would be to test one angle at a time. And then if you find that you've got multiple winning angles, then we can start to combine those, and maybe we might need a different ad format to cover the different reasons there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant. Robert, you've also got your hand up.
Yeah, you said Robert, and you got me all frazzled. I was like, sorry. I'm not raising my hand, but I am now. So no, that's okay. Fascinating discussion, and wow, it's just making you realize all this we're spending all this time on targeting and like build it from the bottom up, and I think this is amazing. I've never done a text overlay on an ad, and our ad creative actually pulls pretty well. And I always get stuck on, do you have like a color that you would use for the text? I'm so stuck on that, like, do you put red, white? Have you found, like, is it just generic white seems to work best? I know there's probably a super amorphous question to ask, but it really tangles me up, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that it touches on maybe something that's a really worthwhile thing to cover in this. And that would be, yes, there are probably colors that I would test first. And I'd be testing your whites, I'd be testing black, I'd be testing red. But what I want you to consider is that, to me, and I know Brad brought this up yesterday in the call, that to me is, if we've got a winning creative and we're trying to eke out like under the like 10% of conversion like lift from that, it's really worthwhile doing those tests. It might not be a test that I prioritize though. Like finding the right angle and finding the right creative format is something that I would prioritize over necessarily like the color of the text. And as well, sometimes a worthwhile test will be just keeping that text color congruent with your branding. So like look at your website, look at your brand guidelines, and try that as well, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. Text or no text? I guess that would be my final question. I have never tested it. So you would say start using some text overlays and see how it runs?
Yeah, a lot of people will ask questions like, should I do this or that? And a lot of the times the answer, because every account is different, is have that testing mentality. Be willing to test these things. Yeah. Perfect. Carolyn, you've got your hand raised as well.
Yes, thank you. Just to reiterate, is there any way you can show us an example of what a simple image with overlay text would look like? Because I'm like lost. I'm only familiar with carousel ads. I haven't done any ads with text overlay. Is there any way you could just show us a simple idea?
Yeah. I'll do my best to cover that. So if I share my screen, you should be able to see the ad library here. Can you see the ad library?
Yes.
Brilliant. Okay. So this is the ad library. You can get there with facebook.com/ads/library if you've never been there before. It's going to ask you what country you're looking for. If you're not quite sure, you can go with all. If you remember maybe seeing an ad that really resonated with you, you could select maybe your specific country, or maybe your ads are really relevant to your specific one. Then it's going to force you to cover a category. These are all special ad categories. So I'd recommend just going with all ads unless you're in that specific one, which those are labeled pretty clearly. If you're if you are inside that, I'm just going to go with some like bigger companies here, and maybe we can try and find some of the kind of ads that I'm talking about. And immediately we've landed on one. I appreciate that I'm looking at this one on desktop. This is definitely designed for mobile, but you can see the angle here is price, and I'm unsure whether this is an offer but we've got a big price angle for the onesies. We've got a single image here, as you can see. So we're talking static. It's not moving. It's not a video. It's not a carousel. We've got a single image, and we've got a text overlay. So what I mean by that is the text is overlaid on the image. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant.
Yes, thank you. Now I know.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, no worries at all. So that leads me into another one to potentially try, because we've focused so far on like a single image. So the point of that one is to really drill down on your messaging. But there are definitely other creatives that I definitely recommend you try as well. UGC is an absolute powerhouse in the ad creative space. It's, I would say, it used to be enough, maybe is the right way to word it. It used to be enough to focus on your UGC, just get some filmed, and it would perform usually really well because UGC is just that powerful. Nowadays, I would say it's not enough to do that. And if we want to stand out, we need to start again, focus on an angle, really try and understand what problems you can solve with your UGC. So we've got UGC, and the idea that I want you to think about here for user-generated content is you want to have a solid hook. You want to have your problem being like described, and you want to have the solution being described as well. You also want to have an introduction of your product, because that's really key. And you want to have features and benefits of your product, and end it with a nice call to action. The key is to understand your angles and your problems that you're solving within that UGC. So what I mean by UGC, to anyone unfamiliar with the term, UGC means user-generated content. So it's typically a video, and what it is it looks like it's been filmed by the user. So this would usually fall under, maybe you might be familiar with unboxing, maybe you might be familiar with reviews of people who are like almost in selfie mode on their camera, just speaking to the camera honestly, and discussing maybe problems that they've got and solutions that your business provided. So this is it's not limited to just maybe filming on selfie mode. Some creators are very good at making it look very high quality, but ultimately the idea is that it almost feels more genuine because it's coming from a user rather than the brand itself. And that's what resonates with people a lot of the time. I can definitely send over some examples after this call of some great UGC that I think you should focus on. So I noticed that Michael's got his hand raised. If you'd like to ask your question.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm well, thanks. Yourself?
Listen, I wanted you to go into why it was so effective, and you're starting that process in terms of it being genuine. But what else was going on to make it so effective, and why has that effectiveness waned to some extent?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question, and that's the kind of question that I was really looking for on this session, because it goes to show that like your head's in the right place and you're thinking along the right lines. UGC, the reason why it was so effective is the idea of it looking native to the ad platform. So it looks like it belongs. It doesn't feel kind of like infomercial or commercial. It feels almost like a friend giving you advice, why I'm trying this brand, why I've found it successful. And it looks like it belongs on the platform. And that's realistically what Facebook want. They want stuff that looks good, and they want stuff that belongs on Facebook. So you get the idea of it looking like it belongs. That's why it's so it was so effective in the first place. And then a very simple answer for the reason of like the maybe effect waning slightly, and by that I'd certainly wouldn't say UGC is dead, but what I would say is that there's just a lot of businesses doing UGC nowadays, and then so now more people are jumping on the format. It's important to really get behind, again, solid advertising principles, angles of why people would buy, and then you can understand and apply those to UGC. So if you're filming it, or if you're maybe getting an influencer, or maybe you're getting a creator to film some UGC, what you're going to want to do is give them maybe a few ideas of what you want to them to touch on, and the more pressing the idea that you want them to touch on is, the more kind of specific you can get with that kind of almost creative brief. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. So essentially what you're saying is, okay, now what we want is UGC, but with the angle approach, using that as the format. Okay. And
100%.
Okay, and just to be completely thorough on this, the UGC incorporates both visuals and voice, or visuals alone, or I mean, we're TV, so well, more than TV, so I guess it's visuals and voice, right?
Yeah, so user-generated content, if you're lacking resources, obviously a bit of user-generated content could be a static. It could be maybe even a review, like a lifted review in context. So what I mean by that is, if they did that review and it looks a certain way, don't try and alter it. You can just take it, almost screenshot it, and get it overlaid on your initial content. But my thing would be, when I'm talking about UGC, usually the biggest performance will be video. So we are talking about visual and audio there.
Okay. And in our case, since we do safaris, that means we should basically be using user-generated videos of people who have actually been on safaris. I mean, even if it's not optimally shot, for example, that adds to the authenticity of it. Is that correct or not?
Yeah, I love that idea. And there's so many angles that, jump to mind there, because there's almost like an element, not to get too sidetracked, of I've never been on safari, and so my exposure to safari has only ever been through television, which is kind of like high fidelity, high quality. But when you're there, it doesn't feel like that. It feels real, and that's a huge like benefit of going on a safari. So my thought would be, does it add that realism, and then focus on angles of like nature up close? Never thought I'd see this so close. The experience is like very emotional, and then you can focus on that. There's so many opportunities there, and I think UGC could really be worth exploring.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Robert's got a question as well that he's put in the chat, and he says, how long hooks would I suggest, and should the product already be shown in the hook if the angle is problem or solution aware? I would say the product should be shown early on in the video. Doesn't necessarily have to be in the hook, and I would identify the hook. How I would define that hook in terms of the video would be the first 3 seconds. I know that some people consider the first 2 seconds, but realistically, there's not like maybe a huge difference, I would say, that I see. I don't think you're missing out if you're looking at hooks over 3 seconds. So a hook is, really a way to, exactly, almost like getting a fish on the line. How are you going to hook people into the video? And I would suggest that the video be about, you can experiment with different lengths. I would say overall 15 seconds is a solid video length. If you're going for something longer form, that's okay. Just be very careful about how long. If we're starting to drift upwards of a minute, I feel like you're going to lose a lot of people throughout that process. And the longer it is, the punchier and more engaging it has to be. Otherwise, people just switch off and they're no longer interested and they'll drop off. And that's not what we want. Additionally, we can try some really short videos. These are almost like GIFs. They're very short, maybe satisfying loops, something like that to do with your product. Maybe it's just your product being held up to the camera and you've got a nice text overlay going on there. So a couple of different lengths. And again, if you've got the question, a lot of the time the answer is test it, because it can be really worthwhile knowing what works for your business, and maybe your business benefits from 15-second videos, and maybe other businesses benefit from maybe slightly more explanation, which can take you beyond that, if that answers that question. Ian, you've got your hand up as well. I'd love to cover your question.
Yep, sorry to butt in here. So unfortunately, I haven't got lions and tigers and lovely things to show. I'm just selling dog food and cat food, so which is really boring. And I'm trying to work out how someone scrolling through Facebook is going to get stopped by seeing a picture of well, what I sell basically, and how would I get some content creator to create some sort of video that's going to be effective when I'm selling this rubbish.
It's an absolutely brilliant question. And again, I'd encourage you to think about that angle, and think about maybe the emotion. I've got 2 cats myself. And when I think about them and when I think about cat food as it relates to them, it kind of throws me into a state of mind where I sometimes think, like, is my cat food healthy enough? Is it giving them the energy? Is it making them as healthy as possible? Is it saving me money? Is it something that the vet would comment on in a good or a negative way? So when we're talking about UGC getting created, and hooks getting created, it becomes about that question that I have in my head, and how are you going to answer it? So don't show me necessarily a picture of just a bowl of cat food. Doesn't look the most appetizing anyway. Probably doesn't taste very good either. But my thought would be, maybe you could have UGC, somebody walking to feed their cat. Everybody knows cats run. You know what it's like when their cats run to their bowl, and it's a it's a pleasant feeling, because it's that desire of looking after almost family, you know what I mean? So maybe you could have the hook of the cat run into the bowl, as filmed from the person going to feed them in a UGC style. So by that, I mean, that could just be somebody filming it on their phone, so simple. But then that you can overcome that kind of like mundane element of it just being like, oh, where's the ad in this video, by throwing that text overlay, and that covers the hook and the angle of like, oh, I can't remember the last time my cat ran to their bowls this quickly, sort of thing, you know what I mean? And then you can start diving into the reasons why people would buy. And I'd encourage you to do creative research, look at your testimonials, and then maybe look at competitors, what they're doing. Look at your own product even, and be like, why should someone buy this? And you can start to understand the reasons why, what feelings people get from it, and then the hook can include a text overlay of something that relates to that hook. Does that make sense?
It does, but I'm not making the cat food. I'm just selling somebody else's cat food. So obviously, for me, I've got to sell fairly large quantities to make it worthwhile to advertise anything at all. So it might be like a 90 pouch pack of Felix or something. And I don't really want to be advertising for the manufacturer either, but obviously I'm going to have to pick and choose the products a little bit. It's just I'm just having real difficulty, because most of the cat food isn't particularly good anyway, and it's not a sort of butternut box special formula like cooked in the kitchen sort of thing. It's just regular cat food, and how to try and make it enticing enough for someone to stop what they're doing and and look at the ad. Basically, it's very difficult to get my head around it.
Yeah, definitely. So again, you're going to be relying a lot on the kind of content that you're doing. And from my perspective, and obviously you're more like familiar with your brand than I am, certainly. But I'd be considering why people should buy from you, and whether that is price, whether that is getting a bulk order, you know what I mean? Sometimes it doesn't even have to be like necessarily something that's overtly like creative Tarantino-esque, you know what I mean? It just has to be, it just has to hit that angle of why people would buy it. Maybe people prefer to bulk order.
Well, it's just, I think it's pretty basic. I mean, it arrives on time, it's reliable, it's not out of stock, and it's convenient, and that's about it. And it's relatively cheap.
Yeah.
So, you know, if I haven't hit those 4 things, then people don't buy. It's very, very competitive, obviously.
Yeah.
So there's not much very exciting there. Is it cheap enough? Am I going to get it? And will I get it regularly? If I order from these people, is it going to arrive when I want it? Not 2 weeks late.
It's great that you're kind of like, as you're talking to me, you're even talking about those questions and those angles, which is definitely, you know, that's the kind of like the reason I wanted to have this session, because it just shows how important creative is. And I think that from your perspective, you've even discussed those angles with me. I would be thinking about making the content on those angles. I know that you're saying like perhaps it's a little bit mundane to have like, focusing on it's convenient, it's fast, it's cheap, it's bulk order, that kind of thing. But what I would say is if you can hit those angles, then there's plenty of creative that can be made there. Why should people buy from you instead of other people? And then you can start thinking about because people need their cat food, you know what I mean, for their cats. So it's like talking about what is maybe a really good reason to buy. So just in a message in chat and unboxing, that could be maybe something that works. And as well, I know it's a super simple shot, but I'm thinking like you've got your angle of why people, you know, the main angle that you're going to hit right off the start. You're going to have people don't like to run out of cat food because that's inconvenient. So, you know, a shot of the cat food getting delivered to the door, a shot of the cat food being, you know, served to the cats. So I'm sort of thinking there, like you can understand like every selling point that you're trying to touch on, you could have an accompanying shot. So it's delivered on time. Cat food getting delivered. It's you know, cost effective. You could have maybe a price overlay there. You could even break it down to how much it costs per serving. You can compare that with competitors, that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
It's fantastic information, and thank you so much to Maureen and Robert as also for their comments. Can I ask you one more thing? I'm aware of taking everybody's time up, but
yeah, go for it.
When you're going for these, getting these videos created, I think Brad mentioned yesterday going to Fiverr or Fiverr, or whatever you call it, and picking from there. Any ideas on how to filter out sort of the rubbish from the wheat from the chaff, if you like, on the content creators? Do you have a list of people to use, or what's the best way?
What I would recommend is really dive into previous work that they've done, and I would really try and urge you, like I say, everybody's free to experiment with this, but from my perspective, what I would urge you to do is the first time, especially you're using these different creators, give them something specific, a creative brief that you think about, you try and develop, and you say, like, here's the creative brief. You have to hit everything here. That's what I'm looking for. And that way, you don't end up with the kind of content that, oh, this isn't really what I was going for. And if you can get on the same page as people with that very specific creative brief to start with, you can start understanding, okay, which style, which person, which personality do I like to see the most? And then as you start developing a better relationship with these people, you can maybe rely a little bit more on their creative control. But these relationships tend to work best with a solid creative brief that you can be quite specific on when you give them. Does that make sense?
That's great. Thank you very much. And sorry I've taken your time, guys.
No worries. That's what we're here for. You know what I mean? These sessions are all about trying to help everybody achieve that. And while you might have felt that question was about you and your business, there's definitely application to like everybody here. So that's absolutely fine. Michael, you're raising your hand.
Yeah. With regard to those briefs that we would give. Yesterday, Brad was showing us how we can use multiple headlines, multiple, texts or scripts to illustrate, and then test it. And then from that, we basically would be able to see which ones work most effectively. Now, if we take a video paradigm, we're using a video, right? That pretty much means that the videos won't be as specific as they would be if we were just addressing one pain point, for example, right? Because obviously, but what he was saying is that the benefit of being able to test those multiple angles, or let's just say multiple messaging per angle, let's just say, rather than multiple, is that outweighs the fact that it is not as tailor-made. I mean, am I understanding what he's saying correctly? And are you basically of the same school of thought?
Yeah, so me and Brad both we both have very similar philosophies when it comes to ads. I would take this point to say, if you hear different things from Ben or from Brad, it's definitely not like a contrarian opinion, but there's definitely more than one successful way to run an ad account. But me and Brad definitely are aligned in terms of use those text opportunities, the multiple text opportunities, to ensure that you're showing maybe your best text, your best headline, your best description. My thought would be there you've got nice blanket coverage of messaging where you need it. But then in terms of the creatives that you're working on, what you're going to want to do is you'll have multiple, you might hit on multiple angles, you might hit on multiple objections. My thought would be maybe the hook or the primary angle that you're spending the most time talking about is different, and therefore you can learn from the differences in the creative. If you're prioritizing one angle one time, one angle another time, even if you do hit both angles in both videos, the more prominent one should give you an insight into which one is going to work for you, maybe as a primary angle. Maybe something is really good, like free shipping, but it doesn't essentially mean that it works best as kind of like a primary angle, and maybe it just works better as kind of like a secondary one. So would that make sense to you?
It does make sense when I'm looking at headlines and text or the actual script. I just don't see I don't see it as clearly in terms of the number of actual video creatives that we would have to apply that. So I think the space I'm at now is, if we have multiple, let's just say 2 different angles: the safety of a safari, the cost of a safari, and traveling alone. That's 3. Okay, those might be 3 approaches that we have, right? Okay, I can actually see how we could have one standard, quote unquote standard type of video that shows the excitement of a safari, right? And however, the voiceover, the video of that video would address those points differently. Okay, and that's really, in a sense, where I was. So I don't see how we would actually get to having multiple videos representing different points of view on that, if, for example, traveling alone, and then we basically are talking about multi-generational family videos, which is another facet, because then the visuals could be very different, because then you basically have a wider range of a family group, right? Grandparents, parents, and kids, right? As opposed to someone who's maybe 35 or something who's traveling alone. I think that's where I begin to see, okay, maybe we really do need a different video. So
yeah. I understand what you're saying. So well, I think I understand it anyway. What I would do is certainly you've come up with 3 angles there, and yeah, that would be 3 different videos from my perspective, and then you take the winning ones and iterate on those. Yeah.
All right, that makes sense. Okay, thanks a million. All right.
Nerd, Hraven, you've got your hand up as well.
Yeah. So you can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So sorry if I because I had to jump on and off this session a little bit. So I'm sorry if you've already covered it, but I think I got such valuable information from you last week, because what it boils down to all for me is, I think, is just lack of trust.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've heard you discuss in this session is pain points, for instance, like you're not really gonna solve what I'm selling. I'm not sure if you remember what I'm selling, but I'm selling sportswear. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you got an abundance of competition, of course, and so you're not really gonna be selling people that you're really solving their problems. But the products we do have are of really high quality, and this is really what I've sort of struggled with coming a point. It's like I read a quote somewhere, like you can tell your audience like how good your product is until you run yourself into the ground or something like that. Like, so I feel like I really struggle with finding like how can I get that point across, that the products we're selling are even of one of the highest qualities.
Yeah, I think that's a oh, sorry. Sorry, you paused and I thought that was it.
Yeah, no worries. I just I've run a little bit, like, because the brand we're selling, it's very highly rated on Trustpilot, and one of my thoughts has been just, should I just make the creatives and like put the like Trustpilot rating
within a video,
like,
you could you could definitely touch on those. Yeah. Like within a video, you could have, like, because your brand's so highly rated on Trustpilot, you could, because if your problem is a lack of trust, your angles and sometimes the objections, certainly as you get lower down in the funnel, you're going to want to start to overcome those objections. So if your main objection is a lack of trust, we're going to want to hit that with like reviews, and that's going to be really valuable. And you could say, you might say, what you're telling me is like, oh, I'm not really solving a problem, and then you're saying to me like, but as are of like a higher quality. So the problem that you are solving, in essence, to me, is that, when people are wearing your competitors' clothes and maybe the quality isn't as high, what issues do they have that they won't have with yours? And you can focus on that. And then you can use those trust signals like Trustpilot, like your reviews on your website, as ways of reinforcing that, and ensuring that you are covering what needs to be covered. People need to see the reviews. They need to see that you're featured in this press. You know what I mean? It's really important that people understand the value that they do get from the quality being higher, and the quality being lower. And you could even compare that with unnamed competitors, and use that to your advantage there to gain trust and overcome a reason why, if people are buying from from your competitors, why they should buy from you instead.
Yeah, I thought it was such a valuable point that it kind of like boiled the main problem down for me. When you DM'd me last week, it's like you have to put trust across like everywhere on the website, through the ads, and and maybe that's where I've been lacking a little bit, like having this consistent enough.
Yeah, definitely. Carolyn, you've got your hand up as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Question: do you recommend creating a video using Meta's tools? Right in I think it's business management. They have a tool to create. Or do you recommend hiring someone off maybe Upwork or Fiverr for, they're very cheap? What do you think?
I think that you can do both. I'd probably recommend you go in off like maybe Upwork or Fiverr there, just because you're going to get people, assuming you look for the right people, you're going to get people who do this a lot and they understand what kind of things they need to say, how they need to come across, their kind of like personality, that kind of thing. And you can get those edited to be engaging as well, which, that's really good. Meta tools are brilliant. And I know that they're working really hard on AI at the moment to improve like creative opportunities. But right now that Meta themselves recommend to like collaborate with creators. So that would be probably my preference there.
Okay. I know they're so inexpensive too.
Yeah, and it's a really worthwhile investment to make. Recently, we have a brand, and they're doing really well, but they're spending a lot of money. And we were saying, like, realistically, we need to get some more video through the door, and just with a little bit of thinking, a little bit of UGC, a little bit of maybe trending audio, which we can cover in another session. A little bit of understanding the customer and why they should buy, like that became our lowest top of funnel cost per purchase, and that was collaborating with creators, understanding that maybe having somebody who knows how to speak to the audience, the value that can bring is massive.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. I know that we're kind of like running over now. So what I can do is, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to look in the ads library. I'm going to look over some good ads that like really encapsulate some of the concepts, and I'm going to put those in the group so that people can look at those and really understand, oh, I should try this, that, and the other. And understand maybe the name of the format and the type of format and the characteristics of that format that they should try as well. But that's pretty much everything from my perspective this week. Really looking forward for another great session with you guys next week. Hope you got a ton of value from this one. Any questions, you can feel free to ask either me, Ben in his Q&As, and Brad as well. And I want to thank you all very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, goodbye everyone. See you next time.